And I'll wait like 15 seconds and then I'll get started. Resume the recording. Okay, we do have a couple more people coming in, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I will kick it off. I just want to start by saying welcome to everybody. It is great to see such a big crowd tonight, and I am really excited. We have a great speaker tonight, and she's going to start in a few minutes, but first, I really want to welcome everybody to our PHP webinar series. So I see some new names on the list. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen Osatek, and I teach PHP 410. So for a lot of you, I'm going to be your first introduction to the public health preparedness program. And I graduated from this program and I stayed with it as a TA, and then I did curriculum development, and now I'm teaching. And I love this program. I mean, I talk about it to anybody who will listen. So I'm really excited to still be involved in it. And we have got a lot of really great initiatives that we've been able to start. And it's just a really great program. And one of the things that we are very excited about is this webinar series. So every month during the academic year, we have a speaker come and talk about some different aspect of public health preparedness. We've had everything from Homeland Security and wastewater to DHS Chief Medical Officer, and suicide prevention, first responder mental health. And this is such a wide field, and we have had a number of great speakers come bring their experiences and give their best practices and their advice to those of you that are either looking to start in this field or looking to make some career changes. So that's one thing that we're very excited about, and that's always going to be the first Wednesday of the month. Another thing that is pretty brand new, we've just done it a couple times now, is we have a newsletter that goes out from Rachel Rager, who you all got to know a little bit on your way into the program. But it has any upcoming events, just any program news that's important. And that goes to all of our current students, but also our graduates, because there are a lot of things that we do that our graduates are still more than welcome to participate in. A lot of, when we have you here in classes, you're obviously an important part of the program, but when you graduate, you are still important to us. And if there are things that we can do, like these webinars or like different speakers, we definitely want you to still be a part of it. One thing that we have that is currently going on, I know you can't see right now, but I have my public health preparedness shirt on. We have a public health preparedness store that is currently open. It's going to be open until September 6th. So once Lynn starts talking, I will post the store website in the chat. This is something that we do about twice a year. It's pretty new. We've only had it open like 2 or 3 times so far, but we typically do it in the spring for those of you who are going to be leaving us in May, and then we do it again in the fall for those of you who are just joining us. So I don't know if I mentioned this, the webinars are recorded and we post them to a site, and I share the link so you can watch any of them again, or any of the past ones that you want to watch are available to you. Another initiative, and I see Jonathan Risley is on. He was a big proponent of this back when he was one of our students, and we have revived it. But we also have a student chapter of the International Association for Emergency Managers. This is something that we are really excited about. Those meetings are on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and those actually go all year round. And we've been having different emergency manager speakers come in and talk about what they do, talk about how they got there, advice, anything like that. But another aspect of the student chapter that we are really interested in is helping each other, anybody who is interested, go through either the certified emergency manager program or the associate emergency manager program. So with all of the great stuff that you guys are doing outside of the classroom and also in the classroom, those go towards the practical experience that you need for these certifications. So if somebody comes into the program and they want to get their certification, you know, come to the IAEM meetings. We can like help each other through it. We were talking about developing study groups to help take the exam. So it's a pretty new venture. So we haven't actually gotten anybody through the process yet, but that is our goal. And that is definitely something that we are opening up to current students, faculty, graduates, anybody who is in the process or wants to join the process or even just learn about the process. That is a great avenue where we can do that together. So last thing before I introduce Lynn, this is the first webinar of the academic year. So I'm excited to be able to kick off a great new school year. And just to give you kind of a little snapshot of where we are, for this year, we have admitted 12 new students. That's 8 students to our degree program and 2 students to each of our certificate programs. We have a total of 58 students who are enrolled this fall, and we graduated 24 people in the last academic year. So our program's growing. I love to see that we've got so many people coming in, and it's great. It's just, the program was so small when I started, so it's always great to take a step back and see how much it's come and how far it's come. So I'm very excited to have so many people here tonight and to get to know you as you go through the program for those of you that are just starting, and to continue working with the familiar names that I see out there. So the real reason that you're all here tonight is not to hear me talk about what we're doing. It's to find out how you can go out and do all this great stuff. And we in PHP reached out to Career Services, the World Campus Career Services, and we have Lynn from their office who is going to come talk to us tonight. And she was asking, it's not going to be a formal presentation, so she's going to give some formal statements, and then it's just going to be more of interactive and question based. So while she is talking, I'll be monitoring the chat and also the participant list. So feel free to raise your hand and then you can ask her your question, or feel free to type it in the chat and I will and I'll just read it out to her. So Lynn is a licensed professional counselor and distance credentialed counselor who joined Penn State World Campus in February 2010 as the first World Campus career counselor, offering career services to World Campus students. Career planning and academic planning are closely connected, and she encourages all World Campus students to schedule a career counseling appointment as early as their first semester. Prior to joining Academic Outreach, she served as Acting Assistant Director of Counseling and Planning for Penn State Career Services. She has an extensive background in rehabilitation, having counseled in career, mental health, and drug and alcohol realms. She earned a doctorate in the Counselor Education PhD program at Penn State's College of Education, where her research centered on counseling in an online environment. So Lynn, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for taking time this evening. It's such an honor. I was saying this earlier to you, Jen. It's such an honor to be asked to come and talk to students. I don't always have the opportunity to get in front of students. Like some of my colleagues who are on campus will just kind of roll into a class, you know. But I look forward to these kind of opportunities where you're already gathering and you're already asking you know, one another questions and having some what sounds like pretty robust conversations about your field, and hearing from a lot of different professionals who are affiliated with your degree program in the area that you're hoping to get into or perhaps advance in or whatnot. What I thought I would do, because I met a couple of you here early on, and when I just hopped on a little bit ago, what I thought I'd do is ask you first, can everybody put in the chat box where you're from? Where are you coming in from? I'm just kind of curious where everybody is. So if you would just sort of put in the chat. Okay, Tennessee, we got Tennessee. All right. Pennsylvania, excellent. Virginia, PA, Happy Valley, there you go. This is going fast. Atlanta, wow. New York. So a lot of the East, kind of mostly here. All right, excellent. Thank you for that. I'm in State College here, University Park, right in the middle of Happy Valley as well. I'm not sure it's so happy right now. There's a lot of rain. I don't know how much of you watch the weather. Maybe you do. Maybe you have that inclination to watch the weather as like Homeland Security kind of folks. But what I thought I'd do, as Jen said, I just want to give you a quick overview. I thank you for that nice introduction that you gave me. I thought I'd just say a little bit about the services that we provide, but then really wanted to open it up to conversation to see what kind of questions people might have regarding your career. So a lot of times when students reach out, they're like, well, what do you do? What do you do? And I honestly often we'll throw the question back and say, well, what do you need? What's going on for you? How can we potentially benefit you? And I do that not to be evasive, but I do that because people have all kinds of different career needs. And I think the last thing folks want to hear is me go through a really long list of things that we could do for you. When you're really asking is kind of like, this is my situation. What do you think? Or, hey, I'm sort of, trying to sort through these interviews or have my resume looked at, or for that matter, gee, I'm changing careers and I'm not quite sure how to get from point A to point B. There's a whole range of questions. You've already declared your major, but sometimes I work with people who are trying to figure that out, or they've got options within their program and they're trying to figure out what's going to be the more the more marketable way to go with my program, or the kind of courses that I take, or things like that. So it's anything that falls under the career umbrella is what we kind of work on with people. Heck, we even work with people who've lost their jobs. They're still students and they've lost their jobs. That's happened a lot more recently for obvious reasons, but really anything that falls under the academic, not academic planning, that's not true. The academic education / career kind of development area, that's kind of what we work with on with people. And that's not just us working one-on-one with you, we also interface with employers. And so what does that mean? That means that there's events that you can go to. In fact, this month, there's going to be some virtual career events that you might want to go to. Career fairs that are coming up here in September. So, I mean, there's events that you can, and at the end, I'll give you my information on how do you get and find out about those events, but there's lots of ways that you can interface with employers too, if that's something that you're interested in. So it's not just us serving you, but we're also saying there's employers coming to look for Penn Staters. They want to figure out the best way to reach you, and you want to connect with them for different reasons as well. And so that's it in a nutshell. So what I thought I'd do is just sort of pause there and kind of see if anybody had any questions about what I just kind of ran through rather quickly, and or if you've got questions specifically that you want to throw out there that you're kind of wondering about. I think I got some in advance, but if anybody wants to type anything in or kind of chime in and sort of offer something that you're kind of curious about, I'm happy to sort of go there with you and answer whatever you have on your mind career-wise.
As you mentioned about career change, I'm doing that major career change from computer programmer into more hopefully into emergency management. So, I mean, tips, tricks on how to successfully do that. I was going for the master's hoping I won't have to like start at the bottom again, but tips, tricks.
So when you make a change like that, I think the thing that we sort of want to think about is like, you don't want to just, like you said, start at the bottom. It's like, what transferable skills, what do I have now that can transfer over? There's always trying to figure that out. And then, the kind of field, the emergency management sort of field is kind of broad. It's a rather big umbrella term. Trying to figure out how to get there from where you are, it's sort of like, well, where are you headed? So kind of getting some clarification about what does it mean to be in, emergency services? What does that mean? And I'm not saying you need to answer that at this moment, but kind of saying like, how do I get there? Well, you sort of have to kind of know the destination as well. Not entirely, not like I'm going to do exactly this job at this employer. We're not going to ask you to do that. It's just a question of like, are you talking about this or this, A or B, and sort of saying, okay, now here's a strategy I'm going to throw out there. when you sort of have I think about it this way, and I think about it as you're not buying the house, you're getting in the right neighborhood, okay? Professionally speaking. We want to talk to other people who live in that neighborhood as well to say, okay, what is it that you did to get there? What is it that you think is a really important thing for people to be able to do to kind of work in this field, you know, and trying to figure out through talking with people, perhaps on LinkedIn groups, perhaps with alumni, you know, perhaps with, you know, other people that you might have connected with who are kind of in the field, including, you know, professors, instructors, etc. You know, anybody who's affiliated with your program, there may be some people to talk with there as well to sort of give you some ideas about, okay, well, first off, what does it mean to do this? What does it mean to live in this neighborhood? And so what's important as somebody who wants to do this kind of work? What is it that people kind of need to be able to do? Now, one of the things that I'll do with people sometimes is sort of say, well, what's the gap? Where is that gap? And what are you trying to get? What's that bridge to get over that gap, right? And that's usually very individualized in terms of like what it is that you end up doing. But it's always good to get ideas from, you can do it from reading, you can do it from talking to people, you know, kind of like what does it mean to go into emergency management? What does it really mean to do these kind of occupations within this kind of neighborhood of occupations? And then try to figure out, okay, so this is where I'm at, this is where I come with, you know, where are those areas that I want to, while I'm in school even, try to develop, you know, because you don't have to wait until you graduate. Trying to figure out, you know, what is it that I want to do with my time while I'm in school to also kind of position myself. And it can be kind of small steps along the way. It's okay if she's got a question.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick.
Yeah,
but if there is something that you are really interested in and a place where you want to get to, her talking about, you know, while you're in school, also think about it in respect to the capstone that you have to do before you graduate. We have another webinar. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time here talking about that, but we have a webinar that's recorded that talks about the different types of capstones that you can do. Like we have different reviews. We've had somebody do curriculum. So if you want to, you know, get into some training, like emergency management teaching or training, you know, you can do something like that for your capstone. So that way you've got experience, even if it's not professional experience, and you'll walk out of here with a finished product that you can go show people. So if you're thinking about this while you're in our program, not all of us teach the capstone, but you can have any of us mentor you during the capstone. You can have outside people mentor you. So kind of keep that in the back of your head. And we've started to talk to students earlier about the capstone. That's why we have you watch it in your first semester when you go through 410, because we want you to have this extra time if it would benefit you. So when she said that,
outstanding point. I think there's some majors that either as undergrad or graduate degrees build that capstone in there for that reason. You know, there's a really good reason. One of the other things that people will do, and people look at me like, when I'm about to say this, people are going to look at me like, sometimes people do internships. Now, I'm not saying that's what you want to do. Okay. We're not quite sure, but an internship is a great way to change a field as well as enter a field, you know? So there's nothing to say that you can't, you know, do some sort of an internship. And I know a lot of times when I talk to rural campus students, they're kind of like, yeah, I'm going to fit that in. Where exactly? I work, I go to school. I'm going to say this now so that you have it in your mind for in the future. Every July, the federal government has a virtual internship program that they do that goes through fall semester and spring semester. And then they put out requests. They put out the postings in July, and you have from July 1 to 31 to apply. Honestly, most people don't know where to go to look for them, but if you know where to go to look for them, you have pretty good odds because most people go to USA Jobs. Don't go there. There's another site you want to go to that actually gives you the full list of them. And yeah, and people don't seem to know that that's where it is and that's how you apply, but you could do a virtual internship. And I think they're about 10 hours a week. Yeah, it's open to everybody, but Penn State's one of the schools that seems to have a lot of applicants who are successful. So, I guess what I'm saying, and I'm saying this to you as an audience, I mean, like if you're interested in federal work, for example, don't count out the fact that you might be able to do a federal internship while you're studying in a kind of flexible way. I've worked with a couple people who've done these and been successful at them, and they've had some really good experiences with it. So I'm putting it out there because it's sort of like, yeah, how's that going to work? Well, there are those kind of opportunities out there that you want to be thinking of now. Is that something that I might want to do like a year and a half from now or 2 years from now? If so, you got to plan a little bit ahead to hit the mark of when they have, their postings up, because there's this window of time that they have. But so there's lots of ways of how to get there. Getting the right, or I don't want to say right, but the most useful information that you can get from other people, and getting informed decisions is really what I always encourage people to do, whatever that might be. Does that answer your question? I feel like I did a lot of talking at like a short question.
Very much so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put my stuff up here now. I was gonna do this at the end, but I'm gonna just put it up now. Okay, so my email is there, but also Nittany Lion Careers is there. Nittany Lion Careers is our university-wide career system. And if you've never been there, along with a bunch of information about events that I can get into if anybody's interested, there's also a way that you can schedule appointments with anybody who's affiliated with your degree program and campus, right? So obviously career counselors from World Campus will be in there if you wanted to set up. There's a couple of us, and if you wanted to set up a time to individually speak about, well, how am I going to get there? I'm speaking in generalities, but I certainly look forward to it. And I've worked with other Homeland Security students who are kind of interested in saying like, hey, well, how do I want to do this? Sometimes it's helpful to just have someone to talk with and plan with, to say, these are the steps I'm going to take next, and then these steps, and then these steps. I feel another question coming, so please keep them coming if you've got them. I can ramble, but you can, you can jump in. I don't want it to be boring. I want to keep the conversation going here. I don't want it to be like noise on my end. Mike, do you have a question?
Another one, if nobody has one. I have another one from a student, but I will, if anybody wants to ask another one, I can hold off. Okay, so I had a student ask, can you give like a list of keywords to search for on like USA Jobs or some other sort that would for things like Homeland Security and public health things? So public health, biodefense, emergency management. What outside of those big ones can you recommend?
So I'm going to say there's a completely different strategy you want to take. All right, let me back up a step here, and then I'll tell you what that strategy is. So the federal government is very transparent about like everything having to do the jobs that they're asking people to do, what kind of ways they rate people when they interview them. They also have their own way of classifying all the occupations that they hire for. So if you go to the Office of Personnel Management, and I wouldn't recommend that you just go there because there's a lot of stuff there, but if you go there, they have their own categorization system of like the occupations that they hire for. So let's just use law enforcement as an example. They have a whole job family, and they call them series. Okay, so instead of calling it a job family, they call it a series. So your series 100, your series 800, your series 1000, whatever it is, whatever job family you fall under, there's a series number associated with it. If you know what series you're looking for, you plug in that series and those will come up for you. Because to search for like a job title, it's not as easy as what it would seem. You would think it would work like Google or something like that, but don't do that. Go to USA Jobs now and put in like 100, see what comes up. You're going to get all these 100 series occupations that are open. Now, those are the ones that are open. There is a way, is there a list of the series? Yes, there is. I promise I will get that to you. I don't want to interrupt too much here, but yeah, there is a place in Office of Personnel Management. You know, there's actually some books as well that have a lot of information about searching for or landing federal positions. I'm going to say the best author is Catherine, Kathryn Troutman, Troutman. She's like all things federal, employment and resume writing. All of her books has the series in it, but you can go to Office of Personnel Management, opm.gov, and I would put in like the series, put series and see what comes up. It should give you a listing of like what falls under each of them. So I wouldn't treat it like it's a search engine, because it's really not. They have it set up a certain way. And yeah, and if you're seriously looking for a federal position, definitely there's some books, depending on what your needs are, that I could potentially recommend. And definitely you want to treat your resume significantly different than you do your private sector resume. One of the things and I might have even said this to you, Jen, is like in the private sector, 1 to 2 pages, 3 to 5 minimum with the federal government, minimum. And that's because here's the thing that other people don't know about this as well. This isn't an applicant tracking system. So when people say put a keyword in, they're saying, I want to get past that applicant tracking system. That's not how they do it in the federal government. They literally have a person from their HR unit looking at one screen, and they have the position opening in the other screen, and they are comparing it point by point by point by point. You don't need to worry about keywords. What you need to worry about is, have I said everything I could possibly say? So where people are like, oh, be concise, say just a little bit, give them a little bit of the teaser. For the federal government, if it's not there on your resume, when you're going to submit that, it doesn't exist, and you get put into the not qualified bucket. You don't want that. You know, there's like the highly qualified, qualified, and not qualified. If you don't give them everything that they possibly want, and if you really want to look deep in OPM, you can find what they really, really want for any given position that's in that series. So there's a ton of information. Don't go in there expecting it to take you just a couple hours. It takes a while to write a really good federal resume. We're here. We can help support those efforts. We can suggest some things that you can do. But in terms of searching, understand what the series is at OPM. That's going to give you a shortcut right to the positions that you want.
Another thing I'd recommend, I know a lot of our students are interested in the federal government, but if you find a contracting job that is with the agency or the office that you're interested in, you know, if you take that contracting job and you get to know the people that are in the office and they get familiar with you and familiar with your work, then that's huge too. I know a lot of people who have like retired from the military have gone to a contracting company for not even that long, and they'll end up with a government job. And also, when we're talking about the federal government, I like to use myself as an example. I'm not a federal employee, but I'm doing public health and WMD stuff working for the Coast Guard. So like, don't just think, oh, I want to do public health, I need to go to the CDC. I want to do emergency management, I need to go to FEMA. Like the Coast Guard's got, we've got public health people. We work, actually, Coast Guard, all of our medical people come from the public health service. So we work closely with them. We have a ton of emergency management people. And they're very busy right now down with Ida, down near you, JD. So, you know, if you're interested in the federal government and being a federal employee, don't limit yourself to where you look, because there are so many more options than what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. And emergency, preparedness is not going to just be at the federal level. You always want to think about it as state and potentially local as well. Even Homeland Security, you're not going to find everything in the federal Homeland Security kind of unit. You got to think about it in terms of, if you're going to work for the government, there's different levels of government. You could very well work for a state, like I said, or a local kind of emergency preparedness kind of unit as well. So you're right, you don't want to just limit it to those big obvious places. In fact, there's usually a lot more places than most people think about. But if it's sort of like, well, how do I find out this about those people? Or kind of like, if you've got that as a burning question, find one of us in our office and and say, okay, so how do I find these places? We don't know them. We don't have them in the back of our pocket, but we've got strategies to help you figure it out. You know, that's a lot of what we end up doing. We don't have a long list of like every possible emergency management contact or office in every state and in other countries or anything like that, but we certainly know how to help you to find it is a lot of times what we do. Does that answer your question, Jen? I know that came in from somebody else. You know, oh, somebody said on here, working with the federal government, I can attest to this. Series are big. They're huge. Yeah. Thank you. I feel validated. What else? What else do we have for questions? And by the way, networking is important for federal jobs as well. I'm going to just hit that point for you. I mean, a lot of times people are like, oh, I got to just apply through. You say, yeah, you do, but you got to network too for any position. You don't want to just sort of apply and hope for the best.
First, I'm going to unmute myself. I'm going to ask you to piggyback off of yourself on that one, because when you and I were talking, we were talking a little bit about LinkedIn and how some people think that LinkedIn is kind of advertising that you're looking for a job, but it's actually so much more than that. So can you kind of recap what you and I talked about?
I will try. I'd love to. So well, the thing that I always say, and I probably said this to you as well, putting a lot of times people are like, I've been on LinkedIn, I've got a profile and nothing's happened. And my analogy is that's like saying I'm in the phone book, but nobody's calling me. Okay. It is a place where you can put your information, but you've got to do something beyond just putting your profile up. And so what do I mean by that? It's not even a job board. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm in there looking for jobs. Don't go in there looking for jobs. That's not going to be the place to get a job necessarily. It was set up for, and it is highly effective for people who want to network and find other people who are in their field. There is, I'm going to say any niche group you can imagine has made a group in LinkedIn to find other people who are in that interest area. I think the one example that I use to kind of explain to people just how niche this group can be, I had somebody who was interested in human trafficking, not as a profession, but as a field of like trying to intervene. Okay. But, you know, we looked at places like, you know, the UN, like what are some places we get? I said, let's look at LinkedIn and see if there's a group. Sure enough, there's a group. I don't know how many people were in it, but sure enough, there's a LinkedIn group for people who want to have an impact on human trafficking. And they're from all different places. So it's one place where you can go. So just out of curiosity, is anybody part of a group on LinkedIn? You are. I am. Anybody else out there? You can jump in.
I posted the links for our PHP group and our IAEM group in the chat.
Excellent. So this is different. So people are like, I've put my profile up there, and you want to have your profile there. But what you want to do is then say, okay, just like you would go out and, you know, like meet other people. It's not like you have to go to like a party or something to network, but you just sort of reach out to people like Jen did to me. She's like, hey, I've got some questions. And now we're, you know, we're kind of in one another's network here. and apparently it's growing, you know, by evidence by all of you being here. But yeah, there's a way that you can just sort of initiate conversation with other people, and the reach that you get on LinkedIn is just really amazing. I actually had somebody, I've gotten to know somebody, where is she from? Iceland, because she's involved with some of the career development sort of stuff that I've been involved with, and I've met with her at conferences a couple of times. It's like, you know, yeah, we're in this group together on LinkedIn. We got to know one another there. It doesn't always happen that way, but it's amazing the reach that you can have. And everybody has a shared interest. You self-select into these groups because you're interested in something affiliated with your school or affiliated with your profession or something like that. And so everybody who's put themselves in there have the same shared interests as you. So it's a good way to go in and network with people. Another way you can use LinkedIn, if you're trying to figure out like, how do I, you know, kind of make this transition that I'm going to make, or sort of like, what do people call this kind of jobs that they do, or where do they do these jobs? LinkedIn has a ton of information on all of us that put stuff in there. and they aggregate it in any group that you're a part of. So when you go into any group, it'll say, well, where did these group members live? You know, where do they work? What did they study? You know, and there's ways that you can sort of like get an idea for what are these job titles called that people do, because they change from one organization to another. You might be doing similar things, but we call it like 5 different titles. So, you know, just figuring out some of the vocabulary, it's really a useful tool for that as well. And I don't know if that's hitting all the points that we hit, Jen, or not when we first talked, but there's definitely a lot that you can do in that space that doesn't take necessarily a lot of effort. You know, you can connect with a lot of people relatively easily.
Another thing, especially in a place like LinkedIn, is, and I might have this statistic wrong, but I think Penn State has something like the largest alumni network in the world, if I remember that correctly. So having a Penn State line on your LinkedIn profile puts you, even if you're not in an official Penn State community, it still has that name recognition. And you know, that's a good conversation starter too. Like, hey, I went to Penn State. You know, I see that you did too. And that's a good way to start a conversation.
I am going to piggyback on that, Jen, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's actually a tool that most people don't realize. So on LinkedIn, if you've been on there and you go to a company or whatever, you can follow it. You do that with your school too. But here's the thing, if you go to Penn State University as a school, we're close to 500,000 people who are affiliated with Penn State in LinkedIn. And I do think we have the largest alumni association in the world, but that could be wrong. That's what I have heard as well. But my point in LinkedIn is if you go to Penn State as a school, and you go down and you're gonna see there's a search box right above it. There's some tabs. One of them is alumni. You can click on that alumni tab and put in public preparedness, put in quotes. That's what the LinkedIn people said to do, put in quotes, public preparedness. You're gonna see who's affiliated with Penn State that have a public, you know, preparedness something along with their Penn State stuff. So you can actually get a lot of information and try to reach out to people that way as well. It's not the same as if you're connected to them in a group for whatever reason, like LinkedIn kind of etiquette, but you can still kind of see who's out there with your interests from Penn State in LinkedIn, not even being in a group. You just go to Penn State. And there's like a really cool way that you can kind of say, well, okay, so what are alumni doing with this degree? Because sometimes people are like, well, what are people doing with this degree? It's not real time, but it's pretty close. You can go into LinkedIn and say, okay, so what are people doing with this degree? What are some things that they've done? You can get some examples and ideas. Odds are it's not 100% current, but you know, people don't go in there and update stuff all the time. But you know, it's at least a ballpark idea of what people have been doing with the degree. Because I know sometimes people will ask that, and it's like we have limited information on, you know, how many people have graduated from your program. You know, sometimes that's like, hey, how many people actually responded to our survey about what you're doing afterwards, right? So, you know, but you can always go on to LinkedIn and kind of find out.
And you don't have to pay for an alumni association membership if you do it like that. Not that I said that. I'm just saying LinkedIn is free.
Yes.
Actually, another question that I had come in was about what students have done. And I don't always hear back from students who have graduated, but just off the top of my head, and I probably should have written this down, I apologize for not, but we have a current student who just got a FEMA reserve position. So he was a contact tracer and got that position during COVID and then applied to FEMA. We've had people graduate from our program and go to FEMA and then go to the White House. People have gone and we've had a number of people who have stayed in their position. So they weren't necessarily looking for an immediate change. This was just more, so my lack of knowing what people are doing isn't a knock on the program. It's just that I know a lot of people who have stayed. We've had a lot of military people who thought ahead and got their masters for their commission or knowing that they're going to be getting out, but they're just not out yet. One of our recent grads just got a great internship from the CDC that she's going to be starting in about a month. So she's really, really excited to be moving to Tennessee and doing that. There were a couple more who just flew out of my head. But we've also had a lot of first responders who have just moved within the first responder community. We've had people who have done this program either waiting for med school, or some of them have done it in the gap between med school and their residency. And actually, I've had a couple MDs who have taken this, and for different reasons. One of them didn't go right to a residency because they had a sick family member, and other ones just needed the break. And were saying that this program really filled in gaps that they wish that people who did patient care got during their formal medical school training. So they really felt like this was a good rounding out of their medical career, or their medical education, sorry.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is very consistent with what happens at the rest of World Campus. It's like, you know, I know when we think of college, we're doing it for career reasons. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to get their degree and then they're going to do something. But there's a lot of World Campus students, and you may be one of them, who's like, I'm doing this, but I'm staying where I'm at. I'm just doing this for my own self, or my own just sort of aspirations, maybe moving up within the organization I'm in. That happens a lot, you know, it really does. So when we're talking about these, it's not with the suggestion of like, no, now we expect you to kind of do something else now that you get a degree. Not at all. You may be perfectly fine where you are, and just saying, you know, I just want to round myself out in terms of my education, or for that matter, you know, in a couple of years, I do want to really look at, you know, my trajectory, my progression within the organization I'm in. And that's you know, a lot of World Campus students are in the same position. And a lot of programs have the same kind of issue where it's like they leave and we don't know what they've been doing. but I did want to say something, and I see, Mike, you have your microphone off. Give me just 1 second. What I was going to say, I heard you earlier say that, you know, students are welcome to come back to this webinar. I'm going to say that at World Campus Career Services, we've never turned away an alum who had career questions. It's not like we're done with you when you're done. And even if we were at full capacity, which of course we're not, there's Alumni Career Services. So you have career services for life at this point, once you graduate from here. So I want to just sort of put that plug in before I forget that, you know, when you connect with us, you know, we're not like, okay, while you're here, we're going to deal with you. But I mean, the whole university is really on the same page with this. It's sort of like, we know, you know, your career doesn't end just because you've left the university. So I just wanted to, while we were on that topic, also just sort of mention that our services are here for you as well. Mike, did you have a question? I see you're not muted, and sometimes that means people are kind of you know, building up to asking something. Maybe not. Maybe not. Well, if you do have a question, go ahead and jump in, Mike. But what about other questions? And so first off, did that answer what you were wondering about, Jen? Because I went into a long thing about LinkedIn, and I want to make sure that, and kind of like, what do people do afterwards, after they graduate, you know? Oh, looks like maybe Jonathan, go ahead.
I just want to chime in and say yes to all of that, because I've been out of the program since 2016. And yeah, it's been that long. So the fact, and just looking at Jen's face there, you know, the program actually does truly care about its people. And that's why, you know, we've stayed in touch, and there's, you know, people, all cohorts, I guess, when I graduated, a couple people are in doctorates, others are still doing things they've been doing. But yes, the biggest thing I would say with this group, and why I personally like to still be involved with it this far after I've been out of it, you know, is because the networking and being able to give back and help in any way you can, because the experience and the diversity of people that you're going to meet in the program, I was not expecting it when I signed up. And I was one of those people like, hey, I got money, I should do something, GI Bill. Yeah, let's go to Penn State. Sounds like a good idea. And that's how I ended up in the program. And I really enjoyed my time, and I'm trying to get back in any way that I can. So,
you know, talking about networking, you're a perfect example. A few years ago, before all of COVID happened, I opened up my email one day and I had an email from him saying, hey, there's this great public health terrorism conference that's going to be going on in state. It was in State College, I think. And we posted it on our LinkedIn site. I was able to go. Jean Langerich, who's the program director, the option director, who is normally on all of these, who you all will get to meet at some point during your program, when we had a few former students. And I mean, I had no idea. It turned out to be an amazing conference, but it was just a random email that I got from you one day. And it was great to have all that and to be able to send it out and have a number of us come. And when we do things like that, obviously right now is a different story, but when we are able to plan something and get together, we will always try to do like a student meet and greet afterwards. I think after that, we all got like appetizers and things together, and we just said, hey, we're going to be here at this time. And we like to take advantage of those opportunities because we know we don't get to meet you very often. And a lot of times on graduation day is the first time we get to meet you. So yeah, we love being able to stay in touch and to get those experiences that we would miss otherwise.
And so something else that story just reminded me of, we actually recruited a graduate to the program by Penn State has its own bio level 3 lab, and one of the head facility person there, Melissa, I believe she did graduate by now. She actually just had her second kid as well.
Aww.
So boy, she's got a each now. But we went and toured the facility and talked about, the preparedness, the diseases, and all the things you're going to learn about. And then we were actually able to recruit her into the program. So yet here's another asset resource. So if you, depending all the things you talked about, hey, I want to do this, how do I get into it? Chances are there's somebody in the program that can help you out.
Very true.
And I don't know anyone that if I could call up a couple people now and say, hey, question, they'd be like, yeah, what's up, Jonathan? How can I help you? Every single thing I still have in my phone here. So
it's kind of the beauty of your profession, right? It's like public health, preparedness, and just sort of being in a helping kind of, even if it's in an emergency capacity, you kind of are probably more helping by nature. So that's kind of a good thing,
Our classes also do involve a lot of group work. So even though we don't have a cohort program, you get to see a lot of the same faces, and there is a lot of teamwork going through it. So you get to know your fellow students pretty well. And I mean, our students are amazing and they all come from such great backgrounds. So you end up learning as much from them as you do from the classes. So it works out. It's great.
I think that's really a robust experience then. I'm sorry, was somebody else going to jump in then?
I was just going to say, and I'm not kidding when I say I legitimately, we would coordinate we found a group of people that we liked and we teamed up and let's go and push through this. So like, okay, yeah, if we take this class together, it's, because we enjoyed, and I had, one of them was a nurse. Another one actually is a coordinator here still on University Park campus in the University Health Services building, Kat. She graduated a couple of years before me, Kat Stout. Still keep in touch with her. And so there's a whole bunch of people that I still talk to on quite a regular basis, not even about this stuff that we're talking about here. So.
Well, Shelley Hafner is going to be giving one of our webinars in a few months. So look for that. Look for that flyer coming up.
That's what, again, I saw this and I've been out of the program 5 years. I just attended I'll call it the core program, the Homeland Security. They put on that program in Carlisle at the Army War College. I attended that here, and that was, quite an excellent program, not specifically on public health preparedness, but that virus that's going on kind of came up. We talked about it a little bit. So, but again, wonderful information, wonderful subject matter experts that we're able to bring in, and we're sitting here and everything that Lynn was talking about, there was a whole lot of knowledge and experience in there that if, some of those people there were teach at the War College, but also working directly in the COVID center in DC. So it was phenomenal to be able to, make those connections. And this program is awesome. And I don't work in it full time, but I still dabble in it on my volunteer side and some other things I do outside of work. But again, I love it. I enjoy it. And that's why I want to get back to it any way I can. And no, Jen did not pay me to say that. So
Did not.
I believe that. I'm just struck by, and this is the first time I've ever talked to you as a group here. I'm just struck by the sense of community that you have. And I don't think, I've talked to other student groups and with faculty, and I don't think the sense of community that you have here is everywhere. So while I'm talking about like going to LinkedIn, stuff like that, don't be afraid to look in your own kind of immediate community here for resources to ask some of those questions of, or alumni who are kind of willing to talk to you as well, because, you know, that might be the simpler, you know, way to find out some of the information. And it's impressive at how many people are sort of feeling like connected to this program. Even I'm impressed that even after 5 years, you're kind of like, I want to stay connected to this group. That's a really good thing. That's just not everywhere at the university.
That was something that we tried to work hard to kind of cultivate, even something as crazy as it sounds about like the t-shirts. Like we wanted people in this program to be able to have something like, this is my program. This is what I'm doing. This is where I am. And so I'm glad that it's taking shape like this. I have another question from a student, unless anybody else has. So she was wondering about, like, if obviously we have a number of core classes that are locked in, but how do you go about, from a career standpoint, choosing electives or even like a capstone project? Is there something that you should kind of be gearing yourself for more specifically, or is it like, do you pick electives more based on what you're interested in, or how would you advise somebody that way?
I think there's a couple of, I want to say schools of thought. It's probably not that formal, but I mean, there's a couple different ways that you can think about choosing like electives. And so you can look at it as like, I want to deepen what I already know. You know, I already know a little bit about marketing. I know you're not in marketing, but I really want to dig into marketing and learn all the strategies and all of that. So you can dig into something that you already know. You can also say, how do I expand my portfolio of what I bring? So it's like, I'm pretty good with marketing. I really want to learn something about, I don't know, supply chain. You're not in business. I know this has nothing to do with, like, well, maybe it does a little bit, emergency preparedness, but, you know, it's pretty important. But like, you know, I guess I was saying you can find out something that's complementary to what it is. I always think you want to be interested in it, or you probably not going to want to read about it or learn about it. So, I mean, that's a pretty important factor in your ability to do it. But yeah, interest plays a part in it. If you're trying to connect that to your career, sometimes people will be like, well, how do I pick electives so that it's going to be more marketable? Well, that all depends on what you want to do. You know, what you're going to do to become a nurse and what you're going to do to become a firefighter are going to be two different things, potentially. Maybe not as different as I might think, but I'm new to this topic. But, you know, I guess it depends on kind of where the neighborhood is and that you're hoping to kind of live in, right? Like, what is it that would help inform you to position you? Well, it depends on what you want to do, you know, in a way. So it's kind of like, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, and you don't have to say, I'm not saying pick this is what you're going to do. Not at all. But if you sort of have an idea and you're kind of like, I'm warm here, this is kind of where I want to be. Okay, build in that direction. What does that mean? What does that translate into? But it's totally okay to take electives just because you think it's going to be interesting. You never know. You really never know how any of this stuff is going to apply in the future to your career.
Well, I guess to piggyback off of that, like if you have the opportunity to take an elective that's interesting, or like, I know a lot of our students come to us asking about independent studies, which we do often, and sometimes students have a great project. So is there a plus to taking an elective that might not be totally in line, but it's something that's related, or should you pursue that independent study that might be pretty specific? Or,
you know, it's kind of, so part of this is sort of like, how do we know what's coming in the future, right? I'm going to use myself as an example. You introduced that I studied online counseling when I was doing my dissertation. Nobody was doing online counseling then. This was in 2003 that I graduated. Nobody was really talking about that. Sure came in handy when the kind of position that opened up that I'm in came in X amount of years later. You know, there's just no way to really predict how what you're doing now is going to apply to something you do later. It's a little less linear sometimes. And so there's no real crystal ball that we can look into and say, hey, this is where the field is going to be going. In fact, there's every indicator that there's a lot of jobs that don't exist yet that people will be doing in 10, 15, 20 years, especially if you're in a tech field, right? People are starting degrees for jobs that don't exist yet, right? People who are in kindergarten now, you know, like half the jobs that are out there, this is a world study. I can't remember but it was a World Economic Forum. That's what it was, study where they were looking at, you know, predicting jobs. And it's sort of like half the jobs that will be there when they're in the workforce don't exist yet, you know? So there's this crystal ball kind of thing that we all want to know. What should I do to prepare for this? Okay, if you're going to be a surgeon, that's a pretty clear laid out path. If you're going to be an engineer or a teacher, you know, even then there's some predictability to that pathway. In a lot of ways, though, we don't really know what you're learning now, how that's going to apply to what you're going to be doing. In fact, there's a trend, and I'm not saying that what you're learning in classes isn't important, but there's actually a trend where employers are kind of like, we can train on some of that stuff, but we need people who can do some of the core things that you need to be able to do in the workplace. Can you work on teams? Can you work with technology? Like there's some real core things that we used to call soft skills that to some extent are like a pretty important commodity or currency in the workplace these days in ways that we've never really seen before. And so I know it's a trick. I know I'm not being evasive. It's just like, we don't know exactly 5 years from now. I don't know what your graduation projections are, but let's say 5 years from now. I mean, 5 years ago, we couldn't predict the pandemic, right? Maybe you guys could. Okay, I didn't, but I mean, maybe you guys had I think some people in public preparedness were kind of like, you guys have dropped the ball. And this was, you know, a couple administrations ago, even where people were kind of like, we're not prepared. But for the most part in the workplace, it's sort of hard to kind of know what's going to come and what impacts are going to have, or what effects are going to happen. What are things that are going to happen in the world that are going to impact what we do at work and how we do it. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to evade this, but it's sort of like our best guess is, you know, you can talk to people and say, this is currently what people are doing and the competencies and what's really like an important knowledge thing to have about whatever it is you want to go into. So that's like your best guess, but there's no guarantee as to that this elective is going to apply. And I know for adult learners, everybody wants to know that what they're learning has some applicability. That's just adult learners. That's just what people do at a certain point in their life. And I get it. There's a practical piece to it. At the same time, we just don't have that sort of ability to project into the future what everything is going to look like in the workforce for lots of reasons. But you know, do your best, do your due diligence and do your best guessing by talking to people who are in positions you're thinking about going into. But, you know, there's no guarantee that, hey, yeah, I studied supply chain. I took some classes in that and I'm going to be ready for the next whatever disaster might come. You know, there's just no guarantee of any of this stuff. And I know that's not a very secure feeling because people want to say, just tell me what I should pick.
Well, I think we could flip that by saying that no matter what you pick, it's got applicability, and neither one of them is a bad choice. So we'll just flip that.
I actually think that's true. I agree. And I went over a couple minutes. I'm sorry, Jen. I'm sort of.
No. I was actually like, if I know it's 9 o'clock, so if people have to drop off, go ahead. But does anybody have any questions? I feel like I've talked a lot and I don't want to step on anyone else who's got questions.
I'm going to jump in on that last comment there because I actually just had another job interview Tuesday where we're talking about how is this applicable? Well, one, they specifically called out, I'm a health and safety professional in my full-time job, and they and I applied for a chemical manufacturer. They make adhesives. And they specifically called out the fact, wait, you have a Homeland Security degree. Tell me about that. And then we started talking about it because they deal with highly hazardous chemicals that make the adhesives. And we talked, the comment from Lynn was about logistics. Well, you can't just shut down some of these chemical reactors because they have adverse effects. And, we talked about how the disasters, and I forget what number class it is, but the one where you basically do all this contingency planning for your little fake city and what happens when We are case studies in Katrina, what happens with the floodwaters and generator locations. And so we started diving down some of these rabbit holes of like, you know what, that makes a whole lot of sense. What happens if we can't get material in for a certain amount of time, aside from the production piece, but we have to be able to safely handle this. What happens if we get a flood? Because the facility is literally right beside a creek. And now we got Ida bringing lots of rain. Fortunately, where I'm at, we're not getting as much rain as the southern part of Pennsylvania, but all of these classes, you can make them applicable to almost anything you're going to do on the outside.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad
do
you
what
said
you
that.
want and personalize this degree as much as you can and what you want to do.
That's exactly right. And that's being able to articulate what you've gotten out of the program is probably going to be one of the more important skills that you can bring, or one of the more important things that you can do when you are talking to, let's just say it's a different employer than you maybe are typically talking to, or even if you're advancing within your existing organization. You know, I think being able to articulate, what have I gotten from this program that can be benefit to you, because employers are like, what do you bring to the table? Hey, I got this, you know, whatever you can, whatever it is you learn about, if you can articulate that and apply it, I think that's the ticket right there.
It's also it's not like your typical like master of public health or your typical master's degree. So when people are looking, it does catch their eye, and they do typically want to, hey, well, you know, tell me about that. So, I mean, it does work out to our advantage too. So JD asked about some of the links. I found the internship link and the series link, but if you could share with us the career fair link that you were talking about. You're muted.
You found the VSFS site. That's
Yep.
the one you go to. Yep. Be ready for July. That's the one. Absolutely. It looks like you sent an OPM. So all of the career fairs, you will find some information about them in nittanyalliancecareers.psu.edu. However, the easy place to go to, and it might be buried under a few links, but I'm going to put it in here. careerfairs.psu.edu. It'll roll you to whatever the current thing is. But if you go in there and you look at fall career days, let me back up 2 steps here. If you go into Nittany Lion Careers and you see a career fair posted there, you can go. You know, nobody's going to say you can't go in there. If there's one that's restricted, you won't be able to see it. So if you can see it, you can go. There's one coming from Barron campus. Doesn't matter if you go to Barron or not. The employers are from Erie, Pennsylvania, or that region, but it doesn't matter. You can go and talk to them as well. Certainly the ones that are university-wide, like the fall career days or spring career days, we have coming up, and I should go to that site to tell you the exact dates, and I should know these, but it's like the 3rd week in September. I want to say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that week. The Wednesday, Thursday, whatever that is, 22nd, 23rd. Let me look at that really quickly here. Yeah, I want to say 22nd and 23rd. There are going to be virtual events that you can attend. And these are the same employers who come in person or who maybe can't come in person. You know, it's like a hybrid this year. You can go to the in-person events, but definitely for those of you who are maybe in Tennessee, you know, don't want to drive, you know, you certainly can connect with employers through a virtual platform that they use. It's called Brazen. You go in and you see booths, right? And you just go to the booth and get in line, you know, and I think you can stand in up to 5 lines at a time or something like that and not lose your spot. So go and find out who's going to go, stand in line. There's a certain amount of time that you have to talk to the employer. Most of it's text. So go in with your pitch already ready. You know, when there's like a minute left or 2 minutes left, say, hey, what's the best way for me to follow up with you? And then follow up with them, right? But have everything written out ahead of time if you can. If for the chat-based stuff, have it already spell checked. What do you want to ask this employer? Have it already ready to go. You can just plug it in, kind of move on.
I don't want to make an extra step for you, but do you have any sort of a mailing list or a distro list when these things are coming up that you can add me to, and then I can make sure that it gets pushed to all of our students?
You know, we usually try to put it up on the calendar. for World Campus. So there's more than just these events that are coming up, by the way. But most of the time we try to push it out on the world. So it's the student side. So it's student.worldcampus.psu.edu. There's a calendar of events. And we try to get that stuff up there in advance so that people know about it.
And sorry, that was student.
.worldcampus.psu.edu. I think you should be able to get into it. It's like there's a public side, then there's sort of like the student side of the website, and that's the side it's on, the calendar of events. I should say you don't have to just go to career fairs to have this sort of interaction happen. Employers come to campus. Excuse me, I'm tangled in wires here. Employers come to campus and do other kind of events as well. So if you're trying to connect with a certain employer, look for what are called information sessions. That's an employer coming to say, hey, this is what we do. Sometimes they like those better. There's less hundreds of people. Maybe there's 30 people, not 500 people trying to talk to them on a day. They kind of like those, you know. We did one probably last, it wasn't this January, the January before with T-Mobile, and they came and talked to people all about the kind of things that they're hiring for and how to get them and the best way to follow up with them and stuff. And it was like, that's what they were there for, is to get you to follow up with them afterwards. Employers do that too. So you don't feel like you just have to go to the career fairs. If those days aren't working for you, don't worry about it. Just go in, look at events, look at the event type information session. There's going to be some virtual employer opportunities to just engage with them that way as well. So don't feel like, oh, I can't do those. I feel pressured. I can't get to those fairs. And gosh, I go into the fair and I couldn't get to the employer anyway. I don't know how many people are going, right? But don't feel pressured by that. You know, there's other ways to connect with employers on a more ongoing basis.
And you just said T-Mobile, and I just want to, I know I've said this to a number of students, but again, when you're thinking of public health and emergency management, you know, think outside of the box, especially with COVID right now. And I'm saying this using COVID as an example, not that COVID's the rule, but so many of these big corporations saw what COVID could do and how quickly it turned everything up. So, you know, your Amazons and your Googles got into COVID response in different ways. You've got major companies now that you would never think have a public health tie-in, have their own staff epidemiologists and have public health people. And I mean, sure, they're doing it for the good of the world, but I mean, they saw what it did to their company. So they want those resources on their staff. So when you hear something like T-Mobile, you know, your knee-jerk reaction might be, well, I'm not a tech person. I don't want to go sell cell phones, but you know, it might be much bigger than that. So, you know, think outside the box, get creative, and, you know.
I would say that not even in this retail sales space of T-Mobile, they were probably involved with some of the emergency kind of operations that are out there. I mean, they have an infrastructure that could fail, right? That they don't want to have fail, right? So, I mean, it's kind of like, you got to think outside of the normal kind of box. They certainly hire all kinds of people at all these organizations. That's why you go to those information sessions. You learn, oh, they don't just hire people who are in technology. Nope, they do not. They hire all kinds of people. So go and find out, you know.
Do you still have a few minutes? Because I do have another question.
Yeah.
So,
let's do it.
Can you expand on living or working for a local area or even a state branch? It doesn't have to be a government job, but I just lost it. Sorry, Amy.
It's okay.
It keeps scrolling back to the top. Like, I don't want the top. I want the bottom of her question.
Is it in the chat, Jen?
It is, yeah.
Oh, and it won't go for me either. It's just stopped.
Oh, here we go. But possibly being contracted out through other larger branches, such as the Coast Guard, that responds and are active participants to larger disasters or emergencies. So she's also interested in working on a larger scale, just not full time.
Right.
So before you even touch that, I will say, like, I came into the Coast Guard. I'm a Coast Guard reservist, so that's kind of that. But I came in on the civilian side as a contractor, and I was only working for, it was a part-time contract. There was a special project that I had worked with them before as a reservist. They knew me. There was a special project that they needed. So I got a part-time contract like that. And also, I mentioned before, another one of our students, FEMA has a number of reserve opportunities, and they're just kind of like, it's almost like a military reservist, but instead of something like a war happening, you're waiting for your hurricanes, your tornadoes, those sorts of things. And then FEMA will deploy people downrange. So that's one example. And then I'll let you let the expert take over.
Well, I'm, not on the topic that you're an expert on. So here's the thing. I'm glad that you jumped in before I did, because my hunch was like, we need to find somebody who can answer that question. And my thoughts went in different directions as to where would we find somebody like that. But I mean, I don't have like all the answers, but I could help you figure out, like I said, like how would we find, luckily you're here and you could give a really good example. But my hunch is by talking to people in this community, even alumni who maybe have moved on, and or networking through other means, you would be able to find the answer to some of those things that are probably temporary in nature. I mean, I know there's nonprofits, and that might be more volunteer than paid. And certainly some of the foundations that are out there that are like, what's the word I'm looking for? Philanthropic kind of organizations, or, like the World Health Organizations of the world, like those kind of places probably have similar kinds of needs where they have to, rally a group of people relatively quickly, and they need to have them on hand. And so, my hunch would be, yeah, there's going to be that need in a lot of different places. What those places are, I couldn't tell you. But somebody who does this kind of work, such as with the Coast Guard, or what was the organization that you worked for that was kind of contractual? What was that?
Well, I worked for a contracting company.
Contracting company. Okay.
But the one I was also talking about was FEMA. The FEMA reservists. Okay. But in Amy's question, she's talking about hopefully having her RN soon. And
Gotcha.
there are traveling nurses. Like my sister-in-law did that for a little while. Oh, she is an RN. Sorry, Amy. My sister-in-law did that after she had her second baby. She would, pick up things. And I see Kelly's still online. She and I were talking about this kind of stuff last year, because Kelly is also a nurse. And there were a number of things, especially with COVID, where they were looking for nurses to go respond. And even if you're not looking for something that's like deployable or traveling, there's a pharmacist friend of mine who was doing stand-up COVID vaccine clinic. So if it's not, in his case, it was volunteer work, but that's at least good. When you're trying to get your foot in the door, that's good practical experience that you can. And as a nurse, you don't need to prove that you can give a vaccine, but it's something that's current and it's relevant, and you can talk about, being part of the COVID response and those sorts of things. So
consider going to a LinkedIn group that has something to do with public health preparedness and say, hey, anybody out there, you can throw a question out to a group. Hey, is anybody out there, like a licensed healthcare professional? Has anybody done anything like this that I'm looking to try to do? How did you do it? Who did you do it for? There may be some people that are probably out there who could answer that question. And if that doesn't work, we have other means of potentially finding alumni. You don't have to belong to the Alumni Association either. Let me get the link for this. It's called Lion Link. This is put together by the Alumni Association, and what they did was they've asked alumni to volunteer to say, hey, talk about volunteering. Let me see here.
Amy, another thing that I was thinking of, because you are a nurse and you can talk this sort of language, is go to your local health department. And when they're doing testing events or vaccination events, and they just want people to be able to talk and explain, not necessarily give the vaccines, but explain to somebody why it's important, explain to them what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing. Or even if they want to have like a community event that kind of brings people in to get vaccines, having, being able to say, hey, I'm a nurse and this is the right information, that's going to carry some weight. And that's something that could be kind of sporadic based on scheduling.
Yeah, your Department of Health or whoever would be potentially deploying that. Yeah, I'm using your term that you used, but I think that's true. There's going to be different organizations that would do, for all I know, your professional, the American Nursing Association might have something. You know, there may be a group that's associated with that particular field that has some interest in that, or they, you know, you could ask people who are all nurses, hey, does anybody do this kind of work? You know, that would be, to me, a possible lead.
There's also the Medical Reserve Corps, which is another. So this is the community emergency response team. Sometimes I'm so bad with acronyms. And then the medical. So the medical these are all going to be kind of dependent on where you live, but these are at least starting pages where you can go and find them.
Yeah, you know, but don't be afraid to, like, wherever you connect with other people in your profession, be it the, you know, preparedness or the medical, you know, don't be afraid to, like, ask people, because there's going to be other people in that community who are doing something like that. The thing that I put in the chat, the Lion link, these are volunteers who have alumni who have volunteered to talk to students about what they do. Do I know if someone is going to be in there who has that particular niche that you're looking for? No, I don't, but it can't hurt to look. You know, they've already said, sure, I'll talk to you. You don't have to find them. You just have to look at Lion Link, and it doesn't cost you anything. Just go in and see if you can find some people in there who are maybe in the same area. And even if they don't do it, maybe they know somebody who does, right? Like, they're nice enough to volunteer to talk to you. So, you know, check it out. See, you know, it can't hurt. It's another tool for you to find people who could answer this question, because, like, we're coming up, I'm literally scratching my head. We're coming up with what we can at the moment, but there's probably people who are much more entrenched in and have much more knowledge than I do. And we just have to find them to figure this out.
You know, another thing I was thinking is that if you are involved in like if you've got kids who are in school, you can go to their administration and come up with offer to review their disaster plan, their active shooter plan. I saw somebody on LinkedIn one day that went to his kid's school and he got a whole FEMA how to, you know, we always talk in class about preparing yourself, and, you know, so he went to his kid's school and he taught the kids about emergency preparedness and what you should be doing at your home. My son went to, up until last year, he went to a Christian school, and they have done a lot with security for religious buildings and houses of worship. So I was sending this all to his school security officer. Before COVID, they had talked about kind of redoing their whole plan, but then they moved to a new building. So, but, you know, you can go to schools, you can go to your office building. If you, another thing I was thinking with churches was last year we had a webinar speaker who was with the State Department of Health, and they were, or the local Department of Health, and they were working with big churches to do vaccine events and COVID testing events. So there are so many ways to, you know, even if you're not in the official position, you could like sponsor, I don't want to say sponsor because that kind of connotates money, but you can organize things. And that's also something that you could put on a resume. Like, I coordinated this big vaccination event or this big security review. And even if you're not the expert in all things, like at my son's old school, they had parents who were FBI agents and cops and things like that, who all came together and reviewed the school's security plan. So you don't have to do it on your own. You could even just plant the seed that turns into something.
That's right. And this kind of brings me full circle back to the original question that I was asked about, like, how do you get from point A to point B? It might be doing something like that. It doesn't have to be a formal internship. It could very well be, hey, you know, I see this opportunity and I'd like to, you know, hop on this opportunity to develop myself further. Any other kind of questions people have?
It doesn't look like it.
That's a lot to take in. Just trying to soak it all in.
And if you don't remember all of it, which I don't think people generally do, you know, it's okay. You know, come back around, ask. Ask again. I tend to repeat myself, so it's okay. I'll repeat myself with you as well. No, but in all seriousness, it is a lot to take in. So please do, follow up as you feel the need to kind of, get some clarification on things in general for the field or for yourself as an individual.
And another great thing is that now that Lynn and I have made this connection, and obviously you guys can all speak to her as well, but I called her to ask her for some advice. And this kind of became an ongoing, something that we want to make an ongoing thing. So as things come up, as they host things, as we hear about things, as we can do things together, we're going to. So we want to keep this PHP and career services relationship going. So please let us know if there are questions coming in, because if you've got them, you probably, other people probably have them as well. So if we can do something to help you, if we can reach out to Lynn, we'd be more than happy to put something together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you don't have to just reach out to me as an individual. We certainly have. We don't know what it's going to be, but we know we're going to do something more together because we just have too much synergies when we start to talk. So something's going to happen. We just don't know what. But
and part of the reason we don't know what is because we really want to know what you all need. So we want to make sure that it answers those questions, and it's not what we think is going to work. It's what you guys actually want. So please let us know.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Last call for any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your participation and for being here.
Yes, and thank you so much for staying so much later. We appreciate you. Not only you giving up your evening, but your extra time.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Well, if there are no more questions, then I will just give another shout out. The next IAEM meeting, JD, correct me if